Hey, welcome to Men on Everything. This is our show where we, the Men on Scandal, put on our Men on Everything caps and we talk about everything we can possibly think of in a reasonable amount of time. I'm Tony Scott. There's Mark Clark. There's Troy Johnson. And how y'all doing, man? How's the weather where you are? We're cold here with about 4 or 5 inches on the ground, man.
You know,
we got about the same thing, but because it's Washington D.C., it sounds like Armageddon.
yes.
you know. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was at WNEW, the news station I work for, and of course, you know, we're talking about 4 to 8 inches of snow, and actually south of here, like south of D.C. heading toward Richmond, they got probably, you know, closer to that 8 to 10, 12 kind of angle.
Right.
Right. But, you know, it wasn't that bad. No need, in my opinion, as a person who's from Chicago, to rush out to the store and get bread and milk and all that stuff. You know, the streets were treated prior to the snow. You know, we probably got 4 or 5 inches in D.C. It's not the end of the world. But then on the other hand, everybody got the day off. The federal government's closed. Schools are closed. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, you scared everybody when you go to the grocery store and all the potted meat, the Spam, and the sardines are off the shelves and gone, man.
Yes.
You know, you've done your job of scaring people when those 3 things are when the pimento potted meat is gone.
Damn.
Yes.
I'm sick of it though, man. I'm so sick of it because, you know, people. What did you not have a loaf of bread yesterday?
Never know.
But people, you know, because I think, you know, we all worked for a guy named Chuck Atkins before. Chuck was from Buffalo, and you know, Chuck used to tell me these stories about because Buffalo they get hella snow, right? And so, you know, 11 inches of snow is not a big deal for him because in Buffalo, you know, you'll get that in in an afternoon, right? And he used to tell me that you know when he went to the grocery store in the wintertime. You didn't buy 1 loaf of bread. You bought 3 loaves of bread, and you put the 1 in the cupboard, and you put the other 3 in the freezer in case you needed them. That's what you did, right? So you know, so he was never frightened by what we got here in St. Louis. So.
And I think that's one thing I will say, Troy. You know, we're spoiled because being from cold weather places, they do have the equipment.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What happened?
The fire truck is driving down the street at an above average speed.
For
so
bread.
Everything's fine.
For bread. Want to get that last can of pimento potted meat, man.
Yeah, you know, but they don't have the equipment that the Midwest has. I will say that much. You know.
Well, in this region, I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they got everything you need around here. But, you know, it is what it is. It's always going to be that way. I think people just want the day off. I wish people would just be more honest about it.
Well,
you know, I don't want to go to work. I think they should just say that.
People don't ever want to go to work.
It's snowing where I am.
Yeah.
Dude, it's July. It's not snowing where you are.
I saw somebody, the last weather event, I don't even want to call it a storm. The last weather event that we had here, this is the first significant snow in this area, by the way. Let me say that.
Okay.
You know, above 1 inch or 2. And we had, I was looking on Twitter, and you know, people obviously commenting and talking about this impending weather situation.
Right.
And one of the school systems did not close on that particular day, and it turned out to be a good decision because it wasn't really that bad.
Right.
And somebody was like, "F the school system," like at the school system, you know, whatever their handle was, you know, and they did not say F.
Well, you know.
Damn, that's how you feel.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when this country, this is how we'll know that the world may possibly be coming to an end in our country, is when you go to the grocery store and there are no more ramen noodles. When they're completely out, of ramen noodles everywhere, then you know it's gotten serious.
Yep, in the world.
You know, because I've never been to a store that has run out. Oh, they might run out of the cup ones, but they always got the packaged ones sitting there, and you can get them like 53 of them for $1.
That's right.
You know, so, but yeah, so. Did you guys watch the Saturday Night Live 40th anniversary show on Sunday night? Because,
man.
3.5 hours. 3.5 hours.
What a letdown
and we got 3.5 hours, and we got 47 seconds of Eddie Murphy.
I know. Let me tell you something. I'm done with Eddie, man. Eddie, stay your ass at home.
Really,
okay?
You were mad at Eddie?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like Eddie Murphy. Don't even come on the show. Don't come on the show. You know, if you're a comedian, you're funny. You're on a show. People are doing bits. And you come back
on a show that made you fun. This is what made
this was ground zero for him. Yeah.
You come back and do your announcement. We don't give a shit about that, man.
Hey.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Hey, a little wound up. How do you really feel, man?
This was I forgot this was the family show. I mean, I'm done with Eddie, man. And you can keep your fake reggae song, and you know.
Oh man, you going in on him, man?
Yeah, man. Because I mean, come on, Eddie. I mean. It's like, I don't understand, man. It's just like, and then I also realized how unfunny a lot of the old Saturday Night Live stuff was.
I gotta say, man, I'm with you, Mark. After an amazing intro by Chris Rock,
right.
I mean, and obviously, if he did it, that's because Lauren said this is what we're gonna do.
Right.
So they have obviously a special feeling in place for Eddie Murphy. And, I mean, he came out, he sucked it up, but it was kind of like, okay, man, tell a joke or something, do something. I mean,
he stopped, he was like, isn't this the part where y'all supposed to roll the thing?
You know what it is, guys? I think being on the radio, and even in my family, you got to keep the bit going, baby. That's what keep the bit going. Keep the bit going.
But there's us, and then there's Eddie Murphy. I've heard everything from the reason why Eddie did what he did was because Chris Rock showed him up. I was like, Chris Rock didn't show him up. Chris Rock was giving him props. He was telling us things that we've never really even thought about, like some of the characters Eddie Murphy did. He only did them one time. He only did them once. James Brown Hot Tub, he did it one time, and
impressive.
People still talk about it, right? When he dressed up as the white guy, remember that? When he walked around New York and the white people gave all the free stuff? He did that one time. Little Richard Simmons, one time.
Yes. And you know what?
It became iconic.
I'm glad to have heard that because, I'm a Howard Stern fan.
Right.
And Howard Stern is probably the only person who talks about or has had some kind of historical anthology and connection with Saturday Night Live.
Right.
He likes it a lot. And I've listened, they've had hours of program where they've talked to different people who have been on the show. And they, so it's kind of has that romanticized history that you kind of experienced on Saturday night. But I tell you one thing I have not heard him talk about Eddie Murphy. What Chris Rock said puts it all in perspective. A show that could have been gone if it hadn't been for Eddie Murphy. Yeah. But I don't hear. I always hear about Aykroyd, Belushi, and who were great, were great. But that next, he talks to Joe Piscopo, but he doesn't talk to Eddie Murphy. And maybe it is because, as Mark said, Eddie might be an ass. Well, maybe he ejected himself. I think it's kind of like. Well, if you're not trying to play with us, if you're not accessible, if you're not going to talk about the accomplishments that you had, if you're a standoffish kind of a diva, then you can be written out of the history. I mean, you can't. We know what really happened, but you know what
right. I mean. I think part of it though is we have to examine the fact that Eddie hadn't been associated with Saturday Night Live in 31 years, okay? So in 31 years, he's had nothing to do with the show. There's got to be a reason for that. What's the reason that Eddie Murphy... And it wasn't the David Spade joke, that when David Spade was doing the news segment back in the day, when they put a picture of Eddie Murphy up, and David goes, "Oh, look, a falling star." That supposedly set Eddie off, and Eddie wouldn't have any... But that couldn't have been it. Something happened, I think, between him and Lorne Michaels that nobody knows about. And Eddie probably got a lot of pressure and felt pressure. You've got to at least make an appearance on this show because what you did, you saved this show, and because of what you did on this show, for this show, with this show, you got to at least show up. And Eddie did, and that's all he ever planned to do. Will we ever really know the truth, guys? I don't know, but I'm not ready to dismiss Eddie just because there's got to be a reason why what happened. Then again. It might have just happened that way because it got everybody talking.
Well, let me just say this to clear up my whole beef with Eddie Murphy. I think Eddie Murphy's, those big characters that you mentioned, I think in the history of the 40 years, Eddie Murphy's characters were the best, and they held up the test of time because those other guys, they don't. I'm sorry. Aykroyd, Belushi, those guys, they can't hold a candle to Eddie Murphy's bits. When you look at him today,
I don't know about that.
You look at him today. Look at him today.
I don't know.
You look at him today. I don't think they even hold a candle. And I think, like you said, Tony, here's the thing that at the end of the day it could be. Eddie Murphy knows that. Lorne Michaels is the architect and the creator of the show, and he gets the credit for all that. Maybe Eddie Murphy feels like, look, not only did I save the show, but I was the show, and I am the show. And so I'll do this, and you can glorify all those other guys all you want to, but we all know that I basically am head and shoulders above all those. Because I can't. Those other bits. What other bit matches Eddie Murphy's? Well, from the old school.
I think, I don't, Aykroyd, I never quite got. I mean, I understand the brilliance of his mind, but his performances were always way over the top. The one, Belushi to me was a genius, because Belushi, when he did the Ray Charles Mozart thing back in the day, I don't know if y'all remember that,
yeah.
You know, and then when he used to do the samurai guy, those things to me were comedy gold to me. Those are the two that I remember the most. I don't remember really anything that Aykroyd did outside of the Blues Brothers, and then he would do the
the commercials.
The commercials. Yeah, those things were great. Chevy Chase, I just remember him from doing the news segment. Gilda Radner, Rosanna Dana. But Eddie Murphy, I think, had the most remembering, his characters. You can always, and I never really thought. I mean, I remember the characters, but when Chris Rock pointed out the other night that he only did those characters one time.
Yeah.
One time. He didn't do them over and over and over again. I mean, so I liken what Belushi did with the Mozart Ray Charles thing. He did that like once, as far as I remember. So that's on the level of an Eddie Murphy type. But Eddie Murphy did multiple things. And Belushi may have done more than one. That's just the one I remember. But Eddie Murphy's brilliance cannot be denied. His behavior, not his behavior, but what he did Sunday night, I just think that there's a backstory there somewhere that we're not aware of, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, the show started off with what's his name? Martin.
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Saying that this show is it's like a high school reunion, mostly white high school.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
And it was true. I mean, when you see, it didn't take long for you to understand why Tracy Morgan was hilarious with the Brian Fellows. I mean, that stands the test of time. So, I mean, anyway, I know we're spending too much time on this SNL thing. What I was surprised about, and I didn't watch it live because I was all in on the NBA All-Star game. I was watching that. I can go back and watch SNL. Tony and I were talking about this. You can't watch a sports event, in my opinion, on tape or watch it later. What happened?
Not when you know the outcome. No, it
right?
Kind of takes
away. So that's the way I played it.
Yeah.
But the show was very overhyped, but it got huge numbers.
Oh yeah.
It beat the All-Star game. I mean, they went all out. NBC went all out.
3.5 hours, man. 3.5 hours.
Red carpet. I thought it was the Oscars. I mean, I saw looked at that.
Yeah.
I love the way that I'll give some props to. These are the things I liked about the show. The intro, with the streaming time, the graphics, amazing, and the performances were really good. I mean, Paul Simon killed his own song. And then Miley Cyrus killed his song.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus's was great. Miley Cyrus, she kind of like reworked it, and it worked. What Kanye West did, I was like, why is he laying down under a sheet like that? What is that about? But that's that artistic thing that some guys do. Paul McCartney, he was man, that was rough. At the beginning of that song, it was like, man, that's Sir Paul.
His pipes have left him.
I mean, at the beginning, it was rough. I heard an old white woman howling, and I realized it was Paul McCartney.
And by the way, I take back what I said about Eddie Murphy. I now understand. I now understand what it is.
No, you can't take it back.
Take all that. Because as I thought about it, we all know what it was. It was the man. The man. Eddie Murphy was like, yes, the man.
Yeah. I mean, that could have been his little protest. You know, I'll go, but I ain't doing nothing.
Yeah.
But I'll go, you know, and he was dapper as always. So did you see Stevie Wonder's show last night, the tribute? I thought it was fantastic. I thought that they probably should have saved Beyonce for last because to me, I mean, the whole show was great, but they pretty much shot their wad with that first performance. So that was, I mean, all the performances were great, but that was under the theory of you save the best for last. That clearly was the best, you know, outside of when Stevie performed himself. But I thought, you know, that Ed Sheeran guy, that dude, I mean, I don't know that much about him, but he shined last night, man. You know,
well, he did shine, but can you comb your hair and put on a damn shirt? I mean,
but that's the old school in us, though, man.
It's not.
I felt the same way.
He looks a damn mess, Tony.
Yeah. No, I felt the same way. But that's the old school in us, though, right? I mean, they don't do that. And Gary Clark Jr., he didn't dress up. You know,
he's a blues guy. That's different.
But you know, Gary Clark he's serious though, man. You know. You know. And I bet they probably told Beyonce, we're going to need you to shake your ass a little bit more than usual during this shit, because we're going to put the camera on your butt, you know? And, I mean, she brought it, you know, and you know.
How did Ledisi feel about this show?
You know? Well, you know what? Back to the Grammys, Troy and I were talking about this before we started taping, and I told Troy, I said, you know, when you're the producer of the show and you got one slot left, you know, Ledisi or Beyonce, what are you gonna do? Who are you gonna choose? Of course, you're gonna choose Beyonce, man. And I said that's like an NBA All-Star game, and you got one spot to fill on the all-time roster of the top 5 starters. Do you choose Michael Jordan or do you choose Calvin Murphy? You know, I mean, come on, it's the same. You know, well, so.
And the thing that's interesting about the Beyonce hate is even people in our business hate in a way that's like somebody who's not in the business. Like you just said, Tony. I was interviewing a Tony Award-winning Broadway star the other day, right after the show, and she was like, "Oh man, I hate the fact that Beyonce took Ledisi's spot. You know she took her spot." And you're like, and I mean, in my mind, I couldn't waste my breath going into a discussion. But again, like you said, Tony, they're building ratings. These shows are about ratings. You got Beyonce, an all-white, angelic Beyonce with other brothers in white, versus Ledisi, an artist who's an amazing artist that only a certain group of people know, versus Beyonce.
Taking nothing away from Ledisi.
Nothing away from Ledisi. And we don't care about who sang the song better, because they don't care about that. They just want to be able to say Beyonce. And so,
yeah. And, I mean, if you can say Beyonce's performing in your promo, and you can say Ledisi's going to be performing, you're going to hit a home run with Beyonce, and you might hit a double with Ledisi, and taking nothing away from her. But I mean, come on, man. I mean, you know, and like you said, it's all about ratings.
Yeah, especially on a general market focused show like the Grammy.
I'm gonna take an angle. I'm gonna take a different angle on this. First of all, it's a shame if there's one slot left on a 19-hour show. So first of all, there should be room for everybody. So, and Beyonce could have done a standalone performance of her own. She won a couple of Grammys, so they could have done that. And Ledisi perhaps could have turned in a Annie Lennox-like performance. Annie Lennox, Beyonce. Yeah. I mean, Annie Lennox may have had the best performance of the night.
Annie Lennox, though.
Which show?
At the
Grammys. At the Grammys.
Well,
she was great last night too. On the Stevie Wonder thing.
She won the best black woman performance of the night. she won the remind you of your auntie in church performance of the night.
She put a spell on you.
Yeah, I mean, Annie Lennox. I mean, is Annie Lennox a better singer than Beyonce? Well, yeah. Yes.
I mean, yes. It depends on what you're looking for.
Well, that's true too. But she put a foot in it at the Grammys, and she did it again last night on the Stevie Wonder tribute.
Well, let me ask you this though: is Annie Lennox who would have sang that better, Annie Lennox or Mavis Staples? If we're gonna do, you put a spell on me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So old black soul singers have no shot of being on the show. So hey, y'all can't be on here roofing Annie Lennox. She sang with Aretha Franklin a few years ago. That's about as good as you get. Sorry, Mavis.
Yeah. And that's you know. And who was the guy singing with Pharrell last night? No disrespect. I didn't catch his name. And I asked Maria, my daughter, and she said, I have no idea who that is. But he was good. I just don't know what his name was. So I just missed that. And is Pharrell always going to perform with his pants rolled up? Is that his deal? Is that his thing now?
I think Pharrell should go back to producing and let other people sing. And he's a producer, so he knows that. but
he's not a bad singer though, Mark. To me, is he bad? Is he not? He's not like, because Sonny Bono was known as a producer. He was a horrible singer, but Pharrell is not a bad singer at all.
Here's the thing: Pharrell knows he's not a singer because he's a producer. So if you ask Pharrell, he knows he's not a singer. I get it, but he ain't a singer, Tony. He ain't a singer.
Well, wasn't Kanye West? Didn't he start off as a producer?
He is a producer. No, he's still.
No, but he started out as a producer only, right? Yeah. And then he got in front of the mic, as I remember.
Yeah.
So and then Pharrell, for someone who's mainly known as a producer with Chad Hugo, the Neptunes back in the day, but Pharrell, he had one of the biggest hits.
Oh yeah, ever. He did.
And he actually ran into that one, right? That was on some kind of kid movie soundtrack, and I think the Disney Channel started playing it first, and then it just caught fire.
Yeah. I'm not hating on him because he's riding it out. But I'm just saying he kind of knows that it was like, wow, like you said, I got to ride this thing out, but I'm not really a singer. There are real singers who at home, thousands of them, begging for a hit. Just leave.
Yeah. Can I at least be on the Stevie Wonder tribute show? Can I at least be on that?
Jaheim is waiting at home. His lips getting browner by the day. When will I be on TV?
That is wrong. That is so wrong.
Oh
wow!
Roll me another one,
man.
Not gonna happen this year,
man. So on the Fox affiliate in San Diego, they ran a story about some rapist who was not going to be charged, and in the background, when they were talking about the story, they ran a picture of President Obama.
The only suspect in a sex assault at SDSU will not be charged. The district attorney's office says they decided not to file charges against 20-year-old Francisco Sousa because the evidence against him is weak.
And they say that there was an accident. And they issued no apology because they said, it was such a small thing that you don't in our business, you don't really apologize for stuff like that. Is that true, Troy, that you don't apologize when you do something like that involves the President of the United States and a rape story?
I think you apologize for anything that is a mistake on television. Ask a couple of these reporters that have, let a couple of cuss words fly.
Mm-hmm.
They come back. We're back from our news break. I just want to apologize for the moment that you just heard of me acting a foolish ass right now on TV. Right. You apologize.
Well, but in broadcasting, though, at least in radio, you're the TV guy, but in radio, I know that after the Janet Jackson thing, so much changed that I do know that in radio, when there's a curse word that goes on the radio, by mandate, you're supposed to apologize for that. First thing out of your mouth before you even identify the station, you're supposed to say, "We apologize for that profanity they got on the radio." That, at least when I worked for Clear Channel, that was kind of like what we had to do, and that actually happened to me when I didn't say the curse word. But me, back in the day, I would put people on the radio live, so
To me,
Tony, Clear Channel changed that when they play songs that cuss. it was a distraction on the radio stations. Every break, the DJ had to stop. We apologize for that rap song by Lil Wayne. We apologize for that song by T-Pain. We apologize for that Snoop Dogg.
You point well taken.
I don't know how you don't apologize. Bigger than the apology is how does it get on air? How does that picture get on air?
So given that circumstance that they put a picture up of President Obama while they were talking about a rape suspect,
right?
Whoever did that, do they lose their job over that? Because it is the President of the United States.
Not at Fox.
Well, not at Fox. That's one question, though. Does that person lose their job? And the second question is, it is Fox. Did they do that on? It was a Fox affiliate, but did they do that on purpose?
I mean, this is conspiracy theory lane. You know, could it have been a mistake? Absolutely. Could it have been intentional? It could have been. I mean, it's kind of like 50-50. I think I would be saying, if I were the news director at that station or the GM, how the hell does this happen on my newscast?
Right.
You know, because, you know, it's a graphic. It was put up as a graphic. More than one person had to see the package, the story that they were going to work on. So all of y'all missed that, you know, or while the news director is running the show and sees it live on the air, they don't go pull that, because how the hell, you know, that conversation had to have happened. Yeah. You know, and in my limited knowledge of watching, you know, being a part of live newscasts, and I'm, you know, I've been in the control room watching what's happening before my segments are going on or afterwards, just so I can kind of get a vibe for what I hope to be doing one day. When little things happen, when little mistakes happen, you know, like a mic, you know, they go to a live shot and the mic is not up, or there's a problem, or they skip the story on the rundown. There's some tight faces around there.
Right.
On little things, one little mistake. I mean, at least in the environment, very professional environment that I'm in, you know, they take it seriously.
Right.
To the point that they're like, man, you know, I talked to the audio guy most of the time when I'm in the studio, and I remember once coming in, he was like, man, we're just not having, it's not really popping like it normally does, and I'm like, it looks fine to me, you know. So people take, I would imagine, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, people take pride in the work they do. You can't let that happen.
Right.
And there should have been an apology issued. Obviously, it went viral. People paid attention to it. So,
well, it involved the president. I mean, if they'd have done that to George Bush, there should have been an apology, and there probably would have been an apology. Well, first of all, it probably would never have happened, you know. But I mean, any president, doesn't matter if you like him or not. If you run a mistake like that, you have to apologize. It doesn't matter what president it is. I mean, you just can't do that and ignore it. In my opinion, I just and then, you know what, Troy, that maybe because I know Troy does a segment in DC on the NBC affiliate there about, you know, talk around town. Maybe you could do a segment about explaining exactly how that how the process works. I think a lot of people would be interested in how something like that can happen, has happened, and what happens afterwards. Well, many people would be very interested in something like that. So
I think it was deliberate because it would have been far-fetched to happen any other way. I'll take you behind the scenes, if you will, in the director's chair. Okay, Rapist Story live. Get the graphic ready. Okay, Obama graphic ready. Rapist Story. Okay, take Rapist Story graphic. Oh my God, Obama's up. Take it down. What happened? See? Rapist and Obama don't even go together.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said Obama. Oh, rapist. I know.
Rapist.
There's no way it's gonna happen. You know, if you accidentally heard wrong, but there's no way. It was a setup.
Right. So bottom line, does whoever that the buck stops with, do they lose their job over that? The graphics person or whoever?
It's too much time has gone by.
Yeah, Fox.
Okay.
No.
Not Fox to get promoted, like you said. So.
And if they had apologized, I don't think there would. I mean, people would have been angry. But if you apologize, what can you say? Look, I apologize.
Right.
The little known fact about this story is that Brian Williams was there when it happened.
Speaking of that, Brian Williams, we haven't been on since that happened. Brian Williams, the NBC anchor for their national evening newscast, had claimed that he was on a helicopter when it was struck by a rocket or something back in Afghanistan. Was it Afghanistan or Iraq?
I think it was Afghanistan.
Okay, and it turns out that
I was there, but I can't remember.
You misremember.
Yeah, I misremember.
It turns out he was not on a helicopter that hit, and then I think he tried to say, well, we were behind it, but you were like 15 miles behind it. So basically, he got called out for lying. And this apparently had been going on for a while. He told David Letterman the story. He'd done interviews and said that repeated the whole thing. He never said it in the newscast.
Well, I thought it's crazy that comedian Hannibal Buress was the one who broke this story along with the Bill Cosby story.
But so Brian Williams, he gets busted for telling this falsehood, and he gets suspended with no pay for 6 months.
Man.
Now, Troy is our go-to, journalist when it comes to news and stuff. Only because Mark and I really have never done it, and Troy's doing it now. So I mean, was the punishment appropriate? Was it too much?
He's out.
Yeah, it is appropriate. It's appropriate. What he was doing too much.
Yeah.
I think
Troy was he in fact doing the most?
He was doing the most, man. He was doing the most. And I think, I had a conversation about this with some other black journalists, and personally, let me say this: I like Brian Williams, and Brian Williams, for me, represents for me, in the positive ways, someone. I felt like if Brian Williams can do this, I can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what he was masterful at is kind of tipping both lines. He is a credible newsman, but he also was great when he was on TV shows with interviews.
Right.
He kind of talked about the story without it being too crazy. He was able to slow jam the news. He hosted Saturday Night Live. I mean, he did all these things that, to me, I'm like, if he can do that, then there is a chance, there's a shot for me doing television news.
Right.
Having said that, lying about everything is ridiculous. It's out of control.
Will he be back?
No.
No?
No. And as the story advances, they're saying that there are questions about, he mentioned that he was at the Berlin Wall when the wall came down.
Right.
And
the Katrina thing too, right?
And the Katrina situation, he says he saw dead bodies floating in the water outside of his hotel. Mm-hmm. in an area. Now that story is interesting because I've seen a couple of takes on that. I've seen a story where a person was staying at the same hotel in the French Quarter, and there is water around the hotel. So a lot of people are saying, that area couldn't have been flooded during the storm.
Yeah, that's what I had read too. That it was not in a flooded area where he was.
There was. Now, how much water was on the ground is a different story.
Right.
Could a dead body be floating in that water? Maybe less than a foot of water.
Right.
That's another story.
Yeah.
So that's been disputed. The Berlin Wall story of him being there when the wall started coming down is in question. They say he came the day after. And he was telling a story about meeting Pope John Paul in 1979.
He was eating a fish sandwich. I said, Pope John Paul, give me a fish sandwich.
I don't know how old Brian Williams is, but that age,
he actually met Eli Pope is what he did. So it was like one of those kinds of things.
The thing that's interesting about all this controversy is I don't think the public really is that. I think people like him, and I think he could get away with it, but it's just not worth the risk, especially when you have a strong black, no mustache, no facial hair, Lester Holt Jr., Troy Johnson Jr.
I do like Lester Holt.
Ready to hit the stage for the first time.
But I think
Lester has a son who's an anchor in Chicago.
That's right, Stefan.
Yeah. Stefan Holt.
Lester did a speech on, you think my first name is funny? Well, watch me get this job.
and of course, Lester's youngest boy, Torrey, was a wide receiver in the NFL. So.
I will say, people in America say, give him a second chance. The second chance America, second chance mode. In the grand scheme of things, the average person doesn't feel like he did anything wrong. It's not about that as much as it is about the standard that you're supposed to have as a journalist.
But 20 years ago, he'd have been fired outright.
Oh yeah.
My thing is, why is he telling us all these damn stories? Damn it! Quit talking about telling somebody.
But he's never done it. He's never done it on his newscast though. He's always done it like in interviews, hasn't he? I mean, not that. But that doesn't make it. It doesn't make a difference. This is why he's being suspended. Well, he's been suspended.
Well, one thing that one thing you can do to keep these things from happening to you is shut up.
But you know what? the memes that have come out. I mean, the one where they superimpose his head over Suge Knight's head the night that him and Tupac were riding in the car and Tupac got shot in Las Vegas. Yes. The one that they superimposed in the Bronco over Al Cowlings when they ran.
Yes.
It was like, man, they have been having a field day.
They had him in President Kennedy's motorcade. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, it's out of control, and that's why he will not be back.
Yeah,
it's too much. NBC can't afford. You know, I think they would like to. You know, they took him off. A couple of things happened. They took him off. Then they took his name off the show.
Right. That was the sign right there that his name has gone off the show.
I think that's a big sign. I think you know this is a real suspension. Right. You know, I mean the way he said, I misremembered. I'm going to go reflect on the mistakes that I made, and I'll be back in a few days. Lester Holt's going to keep the light on.
Yeah. Okay.
They went in there and like, nah, Brian, it ain't going. It ain't going like that, Brian. Why?
What?
Well, when I was in St. Louis with Tony, when they took my name off the show, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. I should have known.
Yes.
Hey, when they took my name off the show, that's when I knew it was a wrap. So
I never had my name on the
show. so hey, this the ISIS thing that's been going on in the world. Apparently, thinking back just a few weeks ago when the video when the news came out that the Jordanian gentleman was burned alive, and the country of Jordan decided, bump what everybody else is doing, we going in, and they I think they executed a few ISIS soldiers, and then Egypt,
the hostages that they want to exchange.
Yeah. They executed, and then Egypt has been going in with some very intense bombing the last couple of days, and some stuff that I've read is like, why are we sitting on the sidelines? I mean, we're the leaders of the free world. And the first thing that popped in my mind was this: that we can't be everything to everybody,
right?
And maybe that's the Homer in me saying that we can't save the world. I mean, I don't know. These other countries though, they seem to be ignoring protocol, and they seem to be like, yo,
you're going in.
With that, we're going in, and which.
Well, I think the problem with terrorism and terrorists responding to terrorists is that the collateral damage, we have the biggest guns and the most powerful weapons, but, we go in and do a show of strength, there'll be a lot of collateral damage, and I think that's what people are always concerned about, or that's what we're probably always concerned about is, what does that mean for the country? Because they are terrorists, they're not a country, and I think that's the part. I mean, it's like we want to put our John Wayne hat on and do it like that, an eye for an eye. But they're terrorists, and that's what makes terrorists so the slippery slope, because they don't have a country. They have locations, and in those locations are normal, innocent people too. So, I don't know.
I think what ISIS has been doing is atrocious. Boko Haram, you can throw them in there if you want to talk about these terrorist organizations, and it seems like they're goading countries in. You behead 21 people, 21 Coptic Christians who are generally people who are of Egyptian background and faith, and it is meant to incite some kind of response from that country, right? And I don't know, I don't know what it is about ISIS and the way that they operate, but I don't know why they're trying to elicit responses from these countries, because they will blow them the hell out of the water.
Well, you know what? My fear is this, man, is that they're gonna one of the countries that has the bomb is not gonna follow protocol, and they're gonna want vengeance, and they're going to take this bomb out, and then that's going to be the beginning of the end.
And Tony,
once the bomb is in play, and everybody knows what bomb I'm talking about, a nuclear bomb. Once that's in play, man, that changes everything.
And Tony,
that's my fear.
But that's a great, Tony. That's a great insight. Maybe that Troy is what their end game is to start pushing those buttons.
You know.
I mean, it's complicated. It's we talked about this once before. We just had the 100th anniversary. It was in 2014 of World War I. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's the Armistice Day. I can't remember which one. But anyway, the connection between World War I and what's happening in the Middle East is one that a lot of people, by average person, may not know. After the war was over, you had the Axis. You had Germany, you had Turkey, and the Ottoman Empire. Basically, when they were empires at the beginning of the century, they were aligned with Germany, and of course you had the Allies. Well, after the war, much like after World War II, the Allies carved up the areas in control that Germany and the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire essentially was broken down into Iraq and Iran, and they ham-handedly did it. The British and the Americans and the French didn't really do it in the way that's why you have this sectarian violence that you have now. They broke that area down into countries without respecting religious beliefs in those areas. Mm. It would probably look more gerrymandered if they had done it the proper way. Have all the Sunnis in one area, and then have all this area for this other group. But they didn't do it that way, and so 100 years this has been bubbling up, and that's why ISIS is trying. They're the Islamic State. They want to reclaim all of those lands and govern under one flag, mm-hmm. the black flag that they fly. So that kind of gives you perspective. But right. But the historical tie is interesting. I know a lot of people are like, yawn, whatever, Troy. But it's interesting. Mm-hmm. These things are. It's a 100-year-old argument, 100 years of frustration, and they're still dealing with it.
Well, I think your point taken. I think a lot of people are probably like, what we don't understand, we don't want to be bothered with.
Right. Yes.
Right. And that's the kind of society that we generally are, and we don't understand it. To hell with it.
Right.
It doesn't affect my everyday life.
Right.
But let that bomb come out
until it does.
Yeah, until it does. So we're at from what I've read, we're reaching a point where with Bobbi Kristina that I think that the whole thing of life support is at a minimum is on the table. Where before it wasn't on the table. What I've read the last couple of days is that it possibly is on the table, and that's a tough decision, man. I don't know. Ultimately, who makes that decision? It would be Bobby Brown, right? He's her father.
Yeah.
Her mother is no longer here. She does not have a husband, as Bobby pointed out a couple of weeks ago. So ultimately, it's up to him. I don't even think Sissy would officially have a say in this. He may consult her. I don't know. But it essentially, though, it's laid at Bobby Brown's feet. I don't know if I could make that decision. I'll tell you, 12 years ago, when my ex-wife was in the hospital, dying from leukemia, and she was on life support, the decision was placed on my daughter, whether to take her off life support. My then 18-year-old daughter. Wow. It was laid at her feet, right? And I was there because she wanted me there. I wasn't there. I did not have a voice. I did not have a say. I was just there for her, and I knew that, and I kept my mouth shut. But there was a meeting of the family, and my ex-wife had 7 siblings and her father, and they were all deciding what they wanted to do. And when her father says, "Wait a minute, this ain't our decision. This is her decision." And what she decides is what we're going to do. And my daughter at 18 years old said, "I will not take her off life support. If she's going to die, she's going to die the way it's, you know, it plays out. So my daughter said no at 18 years old. I cannot imagine being Bobbi Brown here. I mean, Bobby's in his 40s, but I cannot imagine given the go-ahead to take my child off life support. I mean, that's beyond comprehension for me. In my daughter's case, you know, it was the natural, as we say, the natural progression of life. We bury our parents. We're not supposed to bury our children. And for Bobby to have to make that decision, you know, no matter what you think about Bobbi Brown, that's just not something we're supposed to do. And then to have it played out on the world stage is like, my God, I think I would go crazy, guys. I would go crazy.
It's tough. I mean, you know, I rely on my mom and her medical background in these kinds of situations. And the problem is, I mean, we're all tied up with emotion. That's what makes us operate and run. But, you know, what I've tried to learn from her and my parents in general is to think with a clear head, to not think emotionally, think practically, use your head, think intelligent, you know, and what am I getting? You know, I'm not saying I have been anywhere near this kind of situation. And you're right, Tony, when it comes right down to it, I don't know. My mind tells me that, you know, what I would want to do is, you know, I wouldn't want anybody to suffer in that situation. I wouldn't want to suffer in that situation. You know, if I'm not coming back, you know, then I'm out. I have, you know, that's why I have an organ donor part on my driver's license. You know, staying alive, keeping me alive for what? And I'm not coming back. And then, you know, the organs aren't going to be viable for somebody who could really need them. I mean, that's a hard thing to talk about, but it's true. You know, but if I can do better helping out somebody with a lung or a kidney or something, then hey, let's go.
Yeah, but as a parent though, you really don't, you know, well, let me just put it like this. My father died 5 years ago this year, and my father suffered health-wise and stuff for a few years before he passed away. So from that aspect, I get it. He's no longer suffering. He's in a better place. His mom died when he was 13 years old. He's reunited with her. I get all that. But you know, sometimes I think we forget just how permanent death is.
Yeah.
You know, my father, I don't get to hug him and kiss him on his cheek when I see him. I don't get to see him smile, his laugh. I don't get to see, you know, his thinning hair on his full head of thinning hair. I don't get to see him eat his favorite dishes. I don't get to see any of that anymore. I have great memories of my father, but bottom line is this: death is permanent. And for someone to have to decide whether or not they're going to remove their 21-year-old daughter from life support, I cannot imagine. And then when you factor in the sideshow that has been involved in this whole thing, it just blows my mind, man.
Tony, I'm going to add a different perspective. And Troy, we're looking close at that heart of yours. I don't know. No more hamburgers. No more hamburgers for you, buddy.
No more animal style, man.
You notice I didn't mention the heart. I said the lung, kidney.
Your heart and my heart might get rejected. No, sir.
Nope.
Now, Tony, I'm going to add a different twist on it. Now, you made a great point about how definite death is, and when we talk about death, I think that the thing that really terrifies and saddens us is the thought of not seeing, hearing, smelling, being with those people that we love.
Right.
I believe, Tony, that I believe there is no death. I believe that we go on to another plane, and I believe that if you know, in Bobby's position, for me, the decision is probably easier than most because my belief, because Bobby, you know, it's not going to be the same Bobbi Kristina. And I think a lot of times we hold on when people are old and when people are sick. We selfishly do not want to let them go.
Right.
We don't want to let them go. And when someone says there is no death, people go, yeah, whatever. But it's interesting, guys. This is a sidelight. We had a listener follower, Robert. I don't know if you guys remember DJ Robbie Rob.
Mm-hmm.
He recently died. Right. So this was an interesting experience to me because the whole concept of no death comes from my father-in-law, and I do embrace that. And so the interesting experience I had, Troy and Tony, was DJ Robbie Rob was someone who followed us. In fact, he even made a scandal. He made a page for us. Yeah. And so I'm talking. He started off being a fan of Allison, a huge fan. So I asked Allison if she heard from him. He used to tweet us every day. She hadn't. His sister contacted us and said he passed away. So Allison decided that she wanted to go to his funeral. So we go to his funeral, right? We never met him in person. Now, the cool thing about it was he had mentioned Allison. They mentioned that he loved Allison so much, they put her in the obituary. How surreal is that? I mean, there's no way that, you could ever imagine that being the case, right? But so when we saw him physically in the casket, because we'd never seen him before, it had no effect. We don't know him physically. We know him, online, right? Right. So we were fine. We met his mother. His mother thanked Allison, his sisters. We were riding home. I start to read the obituary. I read the obituary, and we both got really emotional. We got really emotional because, that's the person that we knew. We read about him, you know what I'm saying? And so was there any doubt that he was looking down on Allison when he entered his funeral that day? There's no doubt at all. And the fact that he could see it all happening, right? So it gave me another perspective on life because you're right, Tony. The part that we miss the most is the physical piece of it. And that's the part with our parents especially and our kids especially that we don't want to ever let go. Right. But if we, so anyway, so my perspective is a little different, Tony. If I had to make that decision, I probably would. If there's no way she's coming back and the life support is just keeping her alive, I'd go ahead and let her go and take her memories and remember her that way. But that's my perspective.
Right. Wow, that's interesting. I remember when you told us that the man had passed away, but I didn't know the rest of the story that you just told us. That's incredible. It
was so surreal, man. And the fact, like I said, when we saw him, you see somebody in a casket, it really had no effect. But when I started reading it, Allison was driving, we both started crying because it was like, that's who he was to us. But then I thought about how powerful the social media piece is. Like it gets a lot of negative, but that's a guy that impacted our lives, all of us.
He did.
And we never even met him. We never met him. And
I still have a picture of that on my computer of the poster that he made for us.
Yeah, and I think what happens, I think, is with life and death, because we are like connecting with people around the world. Sometimes we never meet in person. The physical piece is the hardest piece, But if you know somebody, their essence, that probably is, they probably can't stay with you forever.
Wow, man, interesting.
Look at you, Mark. Damn.
Yeah, man.
What'd you have for breakfast, brother?
Yeah, man, I tell you what, to see somebody mention you in their obituary, I said, Allison, this is just, you know how big this is. I mean, and the fact that she went, as people who watch this know, my wife's a news anchor. And the irony was he always wanted to meet us, but we never could make time. So.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. I didn't know that. So lastly, there's a story here in St. Louis that happened in Ferguson. It has nothing to do with...
Oh, Jesus.
No, it has nothing to do with that. A woman was convicted of running a strip club and brothel from her house. And she was felony charges of prostitution, of promoting felony. I didn't know there were felony prostitution charges, but apparently there are. Prostitution, say it right. And the thing is, this is like the second time that this has happened to this woman. Apparently she lived in another suburb of St. Louis, and it happened before allegedly, and she got caught, and she did it again this time. They gave her like 4 years. Apparently she had a text mailing list. She would text people and say it's on and popping tonight, and she would have it going on in her house, and her teenage son's bedroom doubled as the boom boom room for private dancing. And I was like, what? Wow. Where do you get the balls to do something like that?
Tony, you don't have to have any balls.
It's more possible if you don't.
Yeah. That's crazy though, man. From your house, it was like a red brick house.
And she's a brick house. Ow.
All she needed to be was light skinned, and she'd have been a red brick house for real, right?
Hey,
nah, but
just let it all hang out.
I'm sorry. What's that address again? Oh, it's so red. Brick house. Okay, thank you.
So I just thought that was like, wow. And then for the news to come out that her teenage son's bedroom doubled as the boom boom room for private dancing was like I was like, wow, man, that's.
Mom, why does my room smell like booty and bleach? Well, son.
You're going to spend the weekend at your grandma's house. Mom,
That's right.
I don't want to. Grandma's dead. Grandma's dead. We still gonna be at her house.
That's right.
Why does the government? Why can't women sell their stuff to make money? That's what I want to know.
Damn, really?
Yeah, Tony says it's a felony. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? Like, with all the stuff that's going on, would I care if my neighbor was doing that? I don't care. Man.
You would care if it was a neighbor. It could become Beyonce.
I'm just saying, it's very interesting how we weight different things. You know.
But you know what? I mean, well, because there's some things that if we don't have law and order, we're gonna have complete mayhem. I mean, we gotta have some kind of, you know. I used to always say this on my radio show. A society without laws is a society run amok.
Yes, you did. You say that all the time.
but
you know, before or after playing Rick James?
The one she was only 17.
Tony's philosophy means, you know, if we don't have laws, Mark, there'll be a booty on every block.
There'll be a red brick house on every block in America.
Yeah.
So
Troy, you know me.
Yes, he does.
I do.
That's why he said it. So. All right, man. So we'll wrap it up right here, man. Appreciate you so much for watching Men on Everything. We talk about as many different things as possible. We covered a lot of ground today, man.
Yeah,
we really did. So, but if you can subscribe to the channel, that helps a lot. You can check out some of our other shows. That helps also. We'll be doing our Men on Scandal show. It's our scandal recap that we do every week from a male perspective. So thumbs up, comments, all that stuff is welcome. All right. In New York City, that's Mark Clark. In Washington, D.C., that's Troy Johnson. I'm Tony Scott in St. Louis, and we'll see you soon.